So this is the second Zoom today, actually. This morning I went to a Zoom funeral. It's the first time. A very good friend who lives in Sweden, and with a very good friend of mine who I spent time with in India, Swami Nishchalananda. With him, they started this ashram in central Sweden, and she unfortunately died of cancer, and today was the funeral. So I joined them on Zoom, and I always find funerals, they have strange vibe actually. There's the sadness, and there's always the sadness of someone moving on. But at the same time, often, in fact, in cases that I've known, there have been enormously powerful energies. Actually, I don't know if you've had the same kind of experience. So it's a mix of energies. There's the energy of sadness and so forth, and there's the energy of there's another energy there actually. It's a powerful energy. It may not be there with all deaths, funerals, but the ones that I've been to, it has always been there actually. And of course, it's a time to reflect. It's a time to reflect on our own mortality, and not that, you know, it's not trying to be negative or pessimistic and so forth, but it's an opportunity to reflect actually on our own mortality. And it's done actually with the main motivation of making us appreciate this life that we have. Otherwise, there's something in us that sleeps. We kind of get on with our life, and we don't reflect very much. We get into our habits. We kind of do all the habitual things. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that is life, and that's absolutely fine. But I think it's very useful regularly actually to just reflect on mortality, on our death actually. I repeat, it's not through, you know, morbidity. It's to bring actually more appreciation for this wonder of life and the wonder of our own life actually, and to appreciate that it's a gift. This life is a gift, and it's a strange thing that if we orientate a little bit, we don't need to, well, some people do maybe, but we don't need to think about death 24 hours a day. We've got things to do. But that kind of reflection, it does orientate us towards an opening, so that we can see the extraordinary fact that we are conscious. And I'm always hammering on, I'm always talking about this conscious presence that is in all of us, and which is the basis for all of us. Now, as I've said many times, we can't think about this conscious presence. We can, of course, but that's not it. But the very fact of reflecting on death and knowing that at this moment I'm alive, and there is something that is conscious underlying my life, somehow this opens up a pathway or a channel to realize something which is beyond thought actually. So thought can't access this mystery of our being, but thought can, reflective thought can somehow open us up to a realization a non-mental realization of this conscious presence. So it's an important part of yoga, actually, an important part of Tantra, an important part of Advaita. It's very much in the Buddhist traditions, this bearing in mind our mortality. And say, not trying to be morbid, it's trying to encourage us to appreciate this extraordinary fact that we are living creatures on planet Earth, sharing with other living creatures, humans, animals, and so forth. So it's a time for reflection. And even in Christianity, you know, if you think about it, a big part of the background of Christianity is death, because Christ was on the cross. He died on the cross. There's a lot of symbolism behind that, of course, which I won't go into at the moment, but there's a lot of symbolism in that. But even Christianity is kind of, from its very roots, is indicating the importance of reflecting on death. So that's what I wanted to start off with. I hope I'm not depressing you, but I hope not. But it's important, you know, otherwise we can spend our lives escaping or keeping ourselves busy with all kinds of things, which is life. Life is a process of keeping us busy. We have life to live, we have family, work, money to earn, looking after a house, looking after a car, and we can keep ourselves busy probably until doomsday. But it's important on the yogic path. It may not be in general life, but I'm not talking about people who are living normal lives. I'm talking to everyone here who is looking deeper. I'm talking to practitioners, yoga practitioners, and therefore I feel very free to make this point. And yes, and as you know, in the ashram we do give courses on death, and they're not morbid affairs actually. Even though we look death in the eyes, they're very blissful times actually. There seems to be an opportunity for people to let go of their guard, to let go of their fixed positions, and in so doing, there's a vulnerability, and this vulnerability allows us to actually feel a lot of joy. So that was that's my opening point. And I've got no questions here particularly. What I want, because I prefer to answer only questions. And if there's no questions, then we will do a meditation, or I will talk about an Upanishad or something, or Bhagavad Gita, or something like this. So if you have a question, I want you to put your hand up, and then Narad will unmute you, and then you can verbalize your question. I like an interaction, you know. I really like this this interactive process. So if you've got a question, please put your hand up. And right, Francesca, can we unmute Francis Cassitron, is that right?
Citron, can you hear me, Swamiji?
I can see you, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you maybe put the voice up a bit?
Yes. So you were talking about the funeral, and you were saying that there is sadness. This was very clear, but that there is also a different type of energy, but you didn't define that other type of energy. Could you go into more depth?
Yeah, I can't explain it in words, but there is a spiritual atmosphere, a feeling. This was my experience, and there are a few people here too who at the same funeral, actually. So they may agree or disagree. There's a sadness, that's for sure. But at the same time, there is something very, very touching, which I think can easily touch everyone present. It certainly touched me, and this was via Zoom also. I'm sure in the actual, physically in that spot. And maybe I'm going to ask, Matthias is there, I'm going to ask him, I think, what he had. Because this is an interactive process here, you know. You know, it's like when you're in a meditation, maybe in the ashram, in your own home, sharing with friends, yogic practice, there is something intangible. You know, you can't quite explain it, but if you're sharing it with someone, everyone knows it. And you can kind of allude to it if they're very open, which they probably are. You know, you can say that was a really wonderful vibe. I felt a kind of a oneness. And any word I'm using here is not sufficient. But I think you know what I'm talking about. You must have been in situations where you feel fulfilled. You feel beyond this moment, there is nothing else. And I don't need anything beyond this moment. You know, it's such a fulfilling feeling that it nourishes us. I always talk about being nourished, and we are nourished by this energy, this presence. It's a bit of both. It's kind of, if you want to divide things, there's an energy, Shakti, if you like, the goddess, and there's also a presence, which would be consciousness, Shiva or whatever. And I think once a person has tasted this, and everyone here has, then it initiates you. It starts you on the path, whether it's yogic path, whether it's any bona fide path, maybe a non-traditional path. You know, once you've tasted it, part of you, but your ego says, I want more of that. You know, it's good. And it pushes us, it inspires us to start to look deeper. And yeah, I mean, that's what yoga's about. It's to try and open us up or allow us to tune in to a quality which transcends our individuality. And the more we're in it, the more bliss we feel, the more fullness we feel. The Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam, you know, this feeling of oneness is there. I'm going to pass you on to Matthias. Do you want to unmute? Because you were there today, and there's probably a few other people who were there. What was your feeling? Because you sang a kirtan also, which I much appreciated. Can we unmute Matthias here? Nara, are you there?
You have to unmute yourself, Matthias.
Can you unmute
Wait
yourself?
a minute. Yeah, I can unmute you if I can find you.
Is anyone else who was there? I'm not sure.
Now, I've got a Matthias Gopala Hagman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gopal, what was your, I mean, it was a sad moment because Swami Nirvikalpa was a very much loved person in Sweden. Her and her husband, who died a few years ago, who was very close to me also.
Yeah.
Lots of yoga practitioners in Sweden, possibly yourself. And, and she was also a highly reputed professor or something like that of comparative religion. So
it was very interesting because we were like two parts of the both worlds. First was the yoga family on one side, and then we had the academic family on the other side. And first on the funeral, like you said, for me it was one of the most deepest spiritual experiences I had in my life. This was so much bliss, there was so much stillness, there was so much perfection. It's really hard to say that on a funeral because people can think you're crazy, but I think a lot of people felt that who was there physically. And I also got some emails afterwards. Now people had a strong experience. And yeah, it was like a meditation. It was like I can't explain it. It's strange. Like you said, the words are not sufficient, but I felt so much bliss, and few more people also said that. And we didn't know, actually. We all knew that she was an academic, but the academic word. One of the professors told us that she's very, very famous around the world outside Sweden. So we didn't know. Because we were so focused on what she did in the Satyananda yoga family. But it was really surprising to know that she was a very good reputation abroad also. But, you know, people do a lot of good things, but we were focused on her qualities as a person. And she was a karma yogi. She was so efficient and selfless. And yeah. You can say a lot about this. I will not have a speech again, but the experience was, like you said in the beginning, was really nice to hear you describe it, because that's what I felt also. To be near death is also to be near life.
Yeah, and that's difficult to explain too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I'll talk about myself a little bit, not too much, because I don't like talking about myself very much, but I've nearly died about 7 times. I'm the proverbial cat, actually. And I'm not going to go into all the occasions, but one of them, it happened that, I mean, it's a long story, I'll tell you another time, but I was driving with a friend in a van in the UK, and the van crashed. It went completely out of control, and I could see it happening, and I don't know, it was a reflex. And I think a lot of our life is based on reflexes. And I saw that the truck was completely out of control. So what I did, I wasn't driving, I was a passenger actually, but I just closed my eyes and I kind of dived. I dived, not physically, I kind of, in my mind, I dived into this Chidaakash. And it was a reflex. I mean, it's not the kind of thing you would think you could do, but it just happened. It was completely a reflex. And then about 2 minutes, well, timeless, it could have been timeless actually, but then I found myself by the side of the road, motorway it was a fast moving motorway. The person I was with, Swami Shivadhara actually, she was sitting next to me. I was untouched. Completely untouched. She had a little scratch here which required 3 stitches, and we were surrounded by broken glass and bits of metal, and everywhere there was stuff except where I was sitting and where she was sitting. Now what happened between when I dived into the Chidaakash and when I found myself on the floor beside the motorway, and a truck driver stopped and was looking underneath to see the bits, you know, and he was most surprised to see us sitting there. Something strange happened between when I dived into the Chidaakash and I found myself sitting by the roadside. Something very strange. And I think it's the mystery of being which relates to the same kind of thing that one can feel. We felt actually at the funeral of Swami Nirvikalpa. It's something, I mean, that was the case I'm giving is extreme, but it's a kind of, there's a mystery. And I like what I said, the threshold between life and death and life, it's a magical time actually. It's a time when, and there are many stories about this, not only me, but many people who've gone into this kind of place, I don't know if it's a place or a non-place, and they went somewhere after death, and maybe they come out of it and they didn't die, but they relate what happened. It's a very, very strange non-place, and I think we felt that at this funeral this morning.
Yeah.
Your singing was beautiful, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So, Francis, does that answer your question or not? Life is a mystery.
Yes, it does. I was expecting two different emotions, the sadness and something positive, but it's a different dimension that you opened, so it's very...
Yeah, but it was tangible, sitting there. I mean, in that particular situation today, and in other cases also, you could feel both currents, you know, the sadness and, yeah, the sadness was there. At the same time, there was this wider dimension, yeah, which we're kind of alluding to, this wider dimension. So, you know, life is a mystery. And and I think if we're lucky, and everyone sitting here is lucky, because we've all been exposed to yoga practice, yoga teachings, you know, and this opens us up to this mystery, actually. And you know, the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which many of you know I like very much, they also give extreme cases. I'm not saying you should provoke danger, but in the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, they give practices which to bring us into this point where the ego drops. And they even give examples on the battlefield, you know, or extreme situations where we're pushed out of our ego. The ego hasn't got time to think and decide and blah, blah, blah. And is this the right thing to do? Or is this the right place? And, you know, all this kind of mental stuff. We get pushed to a point and the ego stops, and it can even be extreme cases. And of course, we know many people who do the mountain climbing, absolutely phenomenal mountain climbing, you know, with no security, and people who do long distance running and extreme sports, you know, they also hit this zone. And that zone, for me, it's the mystery. It's the mystery of what we are. And yeah, and it gives us the nourishment to continue our lives. So I'm talking to myself here also. Let's wake up. I'm talking, I think, more to me than you, because, you know, I can see in me there's a tendency to sleep, tendency to get into a routine, and yeah, and put on the YouTube or emails and blah, 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 you know. That tendency is there, maybe in all of us, but it's certainly in me. And I think we need sometimes to kick ourselves. If it's possible to kick ourselves, we need to kick ourselves. If we don't kick ourselves, we should get someone to kick us, just to bring us out of this sleepiness, you know, where we're just cruising in complacency. So, and I think life is much cleverer than we are, because it does put us in situations. This coronavirus lockdown, etc., which most people are suffering from. Most of us are locked down somehow or another. I think that also is it's provoking this kind of extreme, you know, it's pushing us out of our complacency, actually. And I'm not saying I'm happy about this coronavirus, and I'm sure many of you are thinking, no, I don't want this coronavirus. I want to be able to get on with my life. But it is creating a situation worldwide, almost, for most of us, where we have to examine what we're doing and where we are, and fundamentals even. Anyone else got any ideas? Any questions? Right, Janak, can we unmute Janak, please? Make it short. Not too long, please.
Yeah. In that experience you had with that accident where normal time is normally not, we don't see normal time, but when we get into a situation where our life is at risk, that the second expands, so there's all that space in the second. So where you were to where you ended up on the side of the road, it's like you transcended the memory. Like there's no comprehension as to how you were in the car to where you got to where you were, and there's no description about how you got there. And the other thing is that there's this survivor's guilt for a lot of people, where they survive a crash or they survive a death, and then their life becomes a living hell because of the guilt they can't get rid of because someone died and they are alive.
Yeah, sure. I think, yeah, sure. It's, I mean, I don't feel guilt, far from it, but I can imagine some people feeling guilt. Yeah, sure. But I think, these moments are when we go into the timeless. Everything, our body's in time, our mind is in time, the whole universe is in time. But even physics, quantum physics, is telling us that time is a projection out of the timeless. And we can't get into the timeless by thinking, because thinking is in time. It's impossible. Well, I think it's impossible. But when the mind stops, then it's possible to get into what we would say is the timeless. And strangely, not strangely, but it seems to be a paradox, the timeless is exactly the same as this moment when there's no thinking. This moment, when there's no thinking, when we're not bringing everything into time, that's the same thing. This very moment is a direct channel, a direct portal into the timeless, actually. And yeah, but we can't understand this thinking, but we can experience it through meditation and through moments where we go into this zone. We can provoke it. We provoke it actually through yoga. For me, yoga is nothing but a process of provoking the possibility of going in to the timeless. That's what yoga is. It's a system that's been developed over thousands of years. It's evolved also over time, and it's just a way of provoking this movement where the ego dissolves temporarily and we are into this timeless. And when we come out of it, we can't describe it. All of you know, I'm sure you know, you've been in this meditative state and you come out of it and start talking, but you can't put your finger on it. It's because time, your thinking, your words are trying to put something, trying to put the timeless into time, actually. And it's better to keep our mouth shut, actually, and just be with it. So thanks, Janet, for that feedback. By the way you're talking, I would think that you probably have had some kind of near-death experience or something.
Yes, I've had very similar experiences. Like I think I've got a few more lives left than ones I did, but I've had these incidents, these accidents, and I used to do a lot of climbing as well, and I've been had experiences in avalanches and the such like. So yeah, it's like just keeping yourself on that alertness of the knife edge, and it really the seat of the pants stuff. And I think when we get caught up into this mundane life of just going about our Groundhog Day stuff, it's you've got to find a way to get back on the edge.
Yeah, I'm not advocating you should start rock climbing and hanging from precipices. Some people do it and it's phenomenal, but well, you can if you want.
Yoga's replaced it now, because I really do feel that, you know, yoga really is actually no different. It really does keep you on the edge.
I think it does too, because you're faced with daily situations. You're faced with daily situations, and it pulls you up. And I say this coronavirus is a perfect example. Everyone's living their life and ups and downs, and then suddenly the whole bottom falls out. And we've got this coronavirus lockdown, you know. So yeah, I think if we're sufficiently alert, and yoga helps us to be alert, I think a little bit. If we're sufficiently alert, then situations arise which continuously challenge us, actually. This is my experience. We're continually being challenged. Are there any other questions? This is the night on death. I hope none of you die at the moment. Okay, away you go. Swami Atma Dhyanam. Yeah.
Hi, Swamiji.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Something that often comes up in classes that are being taught, no, I won't say often, but occasionally enough to ask, is people reach a threshold in meditation where the fear of death really comes up. They start to feel like they're dying and they pull right back from that. And I was wondering if there is any experience or teachings you've come across that could help guide people well in that situation.
Yeah, it's a question of trust, isn't it? I'm tempted to tell you another story about my death experience, but it's too long and boring. No, it's too boring. But I think it's trust, and even having the idea that I've got nothing to lose. And people ask me this question: if you go deep, is there a fear of not coming back? And I always say, you will come back, providing you've got things to do in this life. Actually, you are pulled. The ego pulls you back, or something pulls you back. This is my experience, actually. So you may be doing meditation, and you may go really, really deep, and you are not there anymore. Actually, not as an ego. You know, you're there as conscious presence or something like that. You know, and there is this fear somewhere, and it's probably innate in the human constitution. This fear of losing our ego identity. But if we have the trust, and I think yoga helps us to have the trust, then we will come back, and we have the trust that we will come back. If we have the trust that we will come back, then we can go deeper, because we have the trust that we'll come back. We've got a few things to do on planet Earth, so we will come back actually as an ego. The ego identification will return. So it's trust, and I think trust it's a big factor in yoga actually, and in going deeper spiritually. And I always say this: it's not being naive. We don't need to be naive. No, yoga is not about being naive, but trust is a strong one. I guess Shraddha in Sanskrit and in yoga, it's called Shraddha, the trust that everything is going as it will go and it needs to go, and it can't go any other way anyway. You know, it's only our ego that's saying, you know, well, maybe it will happen like this and maybe this. And it's all ego. But of course, life is the ego. Our life is based on ego. That's the way it is. Nothing to worry about, nothing to get upset about. Just the way life is designed. But actually, everything happens. And I know I'm a bit radical in this sense, and I'm sure many people will disagree with me. But I really think we don't have much choice. Things happen, and even the example I give. I mean, do you think, or does thinking happen? I think thinking happens. Even now I'm talking. Do you think I'm working it out? Oh yes, I must say this and I must try and do this, and you know, no, it's just happening. And I think this happening is the way it is anyway. It's just that the ego takes charge of what is happening and says, I am thinking. This is what the ego does. It kind of takes possession, and you say, well, I had a good thought and I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that. But actually, if we look at it deeper, thoughts, feelings happen. We don't think, and we don't have feelings. Yeah, we say I have a feeling, but where does it come from? Can you create a thought? Better one, can you create a feeling? I don't think so. If you really analyze it, a situation provokes a feeling, a situation provokes thoughts. We get on the internet, we watch whatever, YouTube or something, and the whole thing that we're watching, it's provoking a whole range of thoughts. But that's only my opinion. I wouldn't even dream of asking you to believe what I think. But you know, also when we're in meditation, things slow down too, and you know, thoughts become almost slow motion. It can be like this. It's like, yeah, the thoughts are much slower, and.
Swamiji, I can remember you saying in a satsang once, discussing Descartes, I think, therefore I am, and you actually turned it around completely the other way. I am, therefore I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I do have a question, actually, just out of interest. What are your views on the concept of resurrection?
I see, I've got a non-Christian vision of this. I think for me, the resurrection of Christ, it's symbolic of the possibility that we all have of resurrecting in the divine. And of course, Christ is on the cross. For me, it's a perfect symbol of forget all the pain. It's a symbol of loss of ego. He's there, you know, he's there. It's a symbol for me of the loss of ego. And the resurrection, I think, means that. I think it's symbolic of all the potential that exists in all of us to resurrect, to be reborn, if that's the right terminology, to be reborn in conscious presence. I like the word conscious presence because it's kind of more amenable to our concepts. But the resurrection, it's a beautiful symbol. We all have this possibility of identifying, let's bring it down to a certain, identify with the timeless, divine presence, you know, which is not only in us, it's the totality. I don't know if that's acceptable in Christian circles. What do you think?
Yeah, it's yeah. I sometimes think it's a phrase used to help us understand the continuation of energy as well.
Yeah, absolutely, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
It's a very I mean, it's a very poignant symbol, isn't it? Someone dying on the cross. It's very poignant because yeah, it's poignant, but I think it's very, very symbolic. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think every religion, you know, has its own way of pointing the finger at the moon, to use my favorite metaphor. And this is the way that's used in Christianity, and it's a beautiful one, actually.
Swamiji, there's a question from a lady called Laura.
Okay, Laura, where are you? I can't see it.
I'll unmute.
Right.
Ask to unmute. Okay.
Hello. Good night. Buenas noches from Spain. And I'm very happy to see you all. And I want to share an experience that just this morning about the death. And it was for me, for us surprising, because in this time of pandemic and the virus is really a strange situation. You know, I'm a teacher in a high school, and in my city we are working with the students in a school. If we were in a science fiction novel, the student must stay in spaces defined by lines on the floor. They cannot remove their mask. Their desks are separated by almost 2 meters. They must circulate around the school in rows. They cannot share any material. The windows are open. The doors are open. It's really cold inside the buildings. We are our coats and scarf inside the classrooms because it's very, very cold. There are wind, and indeed it's rain inside sometimes rain inside the rooms. In this scenario, very terrible for teenagers, I think life is able to survive behind all these difficulties. And it's amazing. Young people are happy, joking, laughing, showing their affection to others towards maybe in the most incredible or imaginative ways. For example, this morning, in the official review of every week, we must remind all the students the dangers of the contagions and all the you have to be careful, all the things. At the end of this, all these rules, we have to read something like, "Oh, be careful because we can die." And one of the students was really laughing and happy. And I say, "But what are you doing?" I say, "Well, Miss Laura, not today." For me, it was really shocking because they are aware that every day is a gift for them, because they can go to lockdown at home, and every day at the school with their friends is a gift of life. And for me, it was really shocking today to say, it's true. Not today. Today is a new opportunity to be live, to be with others, to share, and to be as much happy as we can. And it's true, this moment, very hard moment for all of them, and for overall for young people. And for me as an adult, I need to be a guide for them. And for that reason, I need to be sure that life is a gift. And we have to share with others this wonderful moment. And I don't know if I can explain myself.
No, you've explained it very well, actually. Sure. Are there any other points? Otherwise, I think we'll sit quietly and do a simple meditation.
There's a couple of observations on the chat. They're
Okay.
not questions as such.
I have to leave at 7:25 to try.
Not that one.
Well, that's interesting too, actually, but still. In April, there's another one here. In April, I woke in the night coughing and most weird experience in my chest. I thought I must have COVID and I couldn't breathe. There was so much fear, but I tried to let go and become more spacious. And I became who I really am for a short while. All fear left and I was vast and free. Yeah, beautiful, huh? Sure. Yeah, fear, of course, it's kind of, it can block us, but I think fear can also take us to the edge. You know, it's a double-edged sword also, fear, to be honest. And the last one, right? Thoughts think themselves, it is said. The symbol of resurrection is a circle also. Yeah, beautiful, absolutely. Yep. So let's, I've done a lot of talking here actually, and it was kind of stimulated by this this Zoom funeral that I was attending this morning, and but I think it's the reason, well, there are many reasons why I brought it up, and some of the reasons I've explained, but I think the main reason is that, you know, life is sacred actually, and the very fact that we exist it's completely beyond our capacity to think. You know, you can't put human life or even animal life or any life in a little box. It's absolutely impossible. So I think also the reason I raised this was to try and get across the idea, it's more than an idea actually, that life is actually very sacred. And I think the more we accept that it's sacred, the more we open up to its mysteries. And the more we open up to its mysteries, the more we realize that life is sacred. It's a circle. It comes back to the previous point here. Symbol of resurrection is a circle. So let's celebrate our life. Okay, we're stuck. We can't go out. Lockdown is keeping us in prison. But within the confines of lockdown, let's appreciate. Let's feel wonder. Here, I sometimes see these ducks, and it seems to be very late. They're all going south. Although sometimes I look up here and a whole flock of them seem to be going north. And I wonder whether they got their orientation mixed up. But there's a whole V of ducks. I don't know what kind of ducks, but thousands of ducks going south. And it's just a wonder. I mean, I always think of the starlings too, when you got these clouds of starlings flying around. I mean, it's so phenomenal. And I think let's get out of this complacency. Let's allow ourselves to be vulnerable. And I think other people can help us also. I think other people are there to encourage us to be vulnerable and to move out of our complacency. So we're going to sit quietly, I think, for a few minutes. So make yourself comfortable. I can see, Peter, that you've made a sail there, Peter, by the look of it. He can't hear me. I'm talking to Peter in New Zealand. I don't know if you can see it. So let's just move our hands and our legs and our head. And we can keep the eyes open or closed, but I think probably best to close the eyes. And let's have a sense of I. Whatever I is. Probably we all say I, well, this is me, this is Nishchalananda, this is John Smith. But there is a sense of I. And we are perceiving sound. And there is an I. You may say it's the I in the brain. You may say it's the I as a thought. But there is an I that is listening to sounds. There is the sensation of our body, the sensation with the ground or the chair. And there is this sense of I that is perceiving or knowing or conscious of this physical sensation. We may say that the I is a thought, the brain, but in any case, there is an I, whatever it is, that is feeling these sensations of the body, and bring your attention to the heartbeat. And again, there is the I, which is there, present, to perceive or to be conscious of the heartbeat. There is an I. You may say, well, yeah, it's my brain. You may say it's a thought. You may say it's a feeling. And then imagining your body to be an empty vessel, so that there is a virtual inner space. And in particular, bring your attention to the heart space. And you may have feelings there, or you may not have feelings there, actually. If you have feelings, you I is conscious of these feelings. And the thing to know is that because you are conscious, because the I is conscious of the feelings, then the center of I is not in the feelings actually. But I am conscious. Whatever the I is, I am conscious. And then bring your attention to the virtual space in the head, or it may be just an inner virtual space, and bring your attention to thoughts. And the thing to note is that you are conscious. I am conscious of the thoughts. Therefore, the thoughts are not the source of the I. Because you are conscious of them. I am conscious of my thoughts. So what is this I? If the I is not feelings, and if the I is not thought, what is the I? And it's very easy to get into an intellectual process. But always, as soon as we try to define the essential I, then we can be sure it is just the mind creating concepts. The I cannot be conceptualized. It is kind of a blank field of availability.